Vampire movies are so back. Let's talk a little bit about Abigail.
How do we kill a vampire?
Fresh off of rebooting the Scream franchise, Radio Silence returns with a reimagining of Dracula's Daughter. Opposed to the 1936 coded lesbian thriller that was the original Universal classic, Abigail takes a bit of a different direction. This time around, Dracula's Daughter is a terrifying tween who gets kidnapped by a group of criminals and held for a large ransom in an isolated mansion. Once they realize that the seeming little girl that they are harboring is actually a bloodthirsty vampire, our rat pack named criminals must fight for their lives. First, I'm gonna get into a spoiler-free review of Abigail for our friends out there who have yet to see Radio Silence's latest outing. Then I'll give you a little warning when we talk spoilers. Getting into this, Abigail has me completely rethinking my Radio Silence movie rankings because this was spectacular. It's a rare horror comedy that has you enthralled throughout, with its stylized meta humor and excellent characters, but never forgets to be a bloody vampire flick either. The writing might be some of the best that I've ever seen from Guy Busick, along with Stephen Shields, who co-wrote this script together. On top of this, Guy Busick also co-wrote the last 3 Radio Silence movies, including both of their Scream entries, as well as Ready or Not from 2019. The character work here is the best I've seen in a horror flick all year. It makes everyone in the lineup stand out. It's impossible to pick a favorite when Melissa Barrera is giving an all-time best performance against child actor Alicia Weir, becoming one of my new favorite horror villains. Abigail, not only as a movie, but also as a character, absolutely rocks because of Alicia's performance here, feeling like an old soul trapped in the body of a 12-year-old ballerina. Leaving the theater, I was raving most about Dan Stevens and Catherine Newton's performances because they absolutely shined here, as they do in all of their projects, but I was most surprised by Kevin Durand and Angus Cloud, who managed to stand out the most in this movie, even though they had some smaller roles. Cloud unfortunately passed away last summer due to an accidental drug overdose. I'm also really glad that this movie honors him in the end credits. Rest in peace, dude. You will surely be missed. No spoilers yet, of course, but I do really like the way that this movie plays around with vampire logic, even if it gets a little messy at times. It's nothing you haven't seen other experimental vampire flicks do before, but it hops on a very effective trend of taking something familiar and making it your own. This is something I also loved about Scream 6, even if Twitter says that that's the most repetitive, boring movie ever made. I still don't understand all that, but whatever, to each their own. There are a few plot snags throughout this movie that might make it a frustrating watch for some, but they were small inconsistencies that didn't really bug me much. Similar to Scream 6, this movie is about having fun flowing through this chaotic journey. If you get caught up in the minute details, you might end up missing the point entirely. I'm seeing some folks say that this movie only springs to life in its back half, but I gotta disagree there. I absolutely loved the character work and especially the writing in the front half, setting everything up. From the moment this one started, I was locked in. They efficiently set up their characters to the point that you can relate to them immediately and throw you right in the middle of this harrowing situation. It's a non-stop roller coaster ride of various different techniques to either scare you, make you laugh, piss your pants, whatever. It's really unique in that sense, even though it does touch on some of Radio Silence's past. There are very clear parallels to Ready or Not, Scream 6, etc. But like I was saying about the pacing and different techniques used, there's an entire 10-minute block of this movie that I would argue isn't even a vampire flick. It's like a psychological thriller. That was so unexpected for a movie that's being advertised as, well, not that at all. On top of that sequence being very unexpected, it's also super effective. There's an entire sequence of this movie where we're watching our characters who are totally misguided maybe do the wrong thing at the wrong time. That is absolutely my cup of tea when it comes to a good horror movie in general. I don't want to know what's coming. Overall, 2024 is showing us that it's going to be a landmark year for horror comedies in general. First, we had the criminally underrated Lisa Frankenstein, and now Abigail, which I might have liked even better than that one. I think I'm just in love with Catherine Newton, but aren't we all? If you haven't seen Abigail yet, I recommend it to fans of horror comedies, Ready or Not lovers, and Scream 6 sympathizers. For this next part of the review, I'll be diving into the pool of dead body juice that is Abigail's spoilers, so please come back to watch this part of the video after you've actually seen the movie. I know some of you still watch this part anyways, but it does make me and the filmmakers very sad when you do that. Please just don't do that, or I'll steal your dog. That's not a threat, it's a promise. Abigail is the horror comedy of the year for many reasons, but I think the thing I was the most impressed impressed by is the character work. Pretty much every character besides the fella at the end, which we'll talk about in a second, absolutely rocked. Melissa Barrera proves again that she's an excellent lead in bloody fun horror flicks, and that some bullshit controversy isn't going to stop her from being a badass movie star. I said what I said. Her performance here as Joey is my personal favorite of her entire career, although I would love to see Sam Carpenter return to the Scream franchise at some point in the future. Maybe when that franchise is under the umbrella of a less shitty studio. Frank, played by Dan Stevens, was possibly the biggest surprise from the entire cast for me. I saw that Dan had some nasty vampire teeth and was covered in blood in the trailer, so I knew it was coming, but I wasn't expecting him to kind of be our big bad by the time we got to the climax. This was an excellent subversion of expectation, especially considering that he gets wounded earlier on in the flick. Usually when that happens in horror movies, you're as good as dead, but not here in Abigail. In fact, it's kind of an unsuspecting clue. A lot of the twists work for me in this film. If it's Giancarlo Esposito turning into a bad guy vampire, but also like a bad guy to the bad guy vampires, that was really cool. I never knew that I needed to see Gus Fring bite into Dan Stevens' neck, but oh my god, that was awesome. I also loved that entire sequence where you have Abigail in the cage saying exactly who everyone is in the room. She has everyone targeted, and this was all done on purpose. Something that, yes, I was expecting, but is a really good continuation to a scene prior where Joey was picking out everybody and basically guessing correctly on who everybody was in the room. Their identities had remained a mystery beforehand. Another pat on the back for the writers here. The only thing that was kind of weird with the twists was seeing Dracula at the end of this movie. I feel like this ominous underworld villain that gets talked about this entire movie didn't really need to show up on screen. Like, we already knew it was Dracula. That wasn't some big reveal, even though the movie tries to present it as such. But like, this movie isn't about him. It's literally about his daughter. That's the whole point. This end scene just felt a bit forced in my opinion, although I do like that it gets capped off by a funny little gag from Melissa Barrera. She walks out the door saying like, what a fucked up family or something like that. And it was goofy, haha, funny. Thankfully, this sequence is very quick. I feel that even the directors felt this didn't really belong in this film. I see Sammy, played by Kathryn Newton, being a fan favorite here. Minus her very complicated role in the MCU, Kathryn Newton almost always delivers, especially in horror. Not only is she Lisa Frankenstein, but her lead roles in Paranormal Activity 4 and Freaky are crazy good. Sammy is kind of our Randy Meeks here, delivering a lot of meta lines and some goofy moments.
What are we talking about? Like an Anne Rice or True Blood? You know, Twilight?
I see this being yet another very underrated role from Kathryn to add to the very long list. All of the negatives I've had for this movie so far are little things that I can kind of push to the side and look past to see the greater fun picture here. But there is one big fluke of this movie that kind of bugged me a little bit. It's the fact that our characters are constantly splitting up. It's a horror trope as old as time, and in modern horror especially, it can get annoying.
This isn't right, we should split up.
Really?
It really starts to bug me in the scene leading to Peter's death. It was so obvious that our dumb muscle character was about to be killed by a transforming Sammy in this sequence. The Megan dance scene afterwards doesn't save face either. I am really glad, however, that that's our only Megan parallel throughout this entire flick. I thought it was gonna be way worse, and I'm very happy that it was left to just that one dance sequence. I think Universal was just excited. Abigail mostly stands on its own. I first saw vampires that explode when exposed to sunlight in Ryan Pro's Terror segment for VHS 94. It's my favorite film in the VHS franchise, and it was produced by Radio Silence, who seem to have liked this idea a bit themselves. Don't get me wrong though, I absolutely love that Abigail borrows that here and makes it unique again. It's a super shocking moment in both films, and it's done well in either place. They're both very different stories that just happen to involve exploding vampires. In the case of VHS 94, a bunch of extremists want to use the vampire as a bomb. Here, we don't even know that Abigail can explode until about halfway through the movie. Once again, another really good subversion of expectations, because earlier on in the film, a lot of vampire tropes didn't work against Abigail, i.e. the garlic. But once Melissa Barrera rips those planks off that wall and that sunlight comes on in, well, Abigail's one hand down. That scene was gnarly. Ugh! I got to see this movie with Eric from the Bearded Entertainment, mad shout out to him, who was in town helping me with a short film that I'm writing and directing currently. I'll have an update on that for my patrons as soon as we're done with principal photography, which should be Monday night. Something that I was telling Eric as we were walking out of the theater is that this feels like Radio Silence's horror swan song. It's almost this strange overture of everything that has come before from them. There's clear nods to their Scream movies or Ready or Not if it's in the set design and cast. As they form a big production studio and announce projects outside the realm of horror, I feel like they're about to enter a new phase of their career. Whatever comes next from them, I will be seated, horror or not. In conclusion, Abigail is a certified horror comedy banger that makes vampires cool again, and thankfully not in the way that Twilight did it. Abigail gets a 9 out of 10 from me, and it might just be my favorite horror flick from Radio Silence thus far. Maybe that's the recency bias talking though. It's a stiff competition overall though, as I enjoy pretty much every movie they've touched. I really enjoyed their newer and more mainstream hits like both Screams 5 and 6, as well as Ready or Not. But their earlier indie stuff is not to be missed either. Southbound is arguably a better anthology flick than some of the VHS movies, and Devil's Due is a criminally underrated found footage joint. I mean, even the marketing for that last movie was awesome. They jump scared a bunch of people with the demon baby. I had a literally explosive blast with Abigail, and this is probably where I would put it in my 2024 movie rankings overall. What did you think of this new Radio Silence vampire comedy? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching this brand new review. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, or I swear to God I will steal your dog. That wasn't a joke earlier. I have your address, I know it's a golden retriever, and I know his name's Buddy. One person is going to be terrified after I said that, so just to clarify, that is a joke. But please subscribe. Thank you all again for watching. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.